Welcome back to here with Goldberg. Today we're going to be talking about the major in accounting. Is it worth your time, money, and efforts? Now, accounting is typically seen as one of the stronger subsets of business, largely because you get that training in analyzing balance sheets and whatnot. At the same time, it is crucial to understand there's a number of headwinds facing the industry, and so you have to construct a roadmap of sorts, which, of course, many will say, that's cliche. But you'd be amazed how many folks just wallow through college without any purpose and come out after 4 years like, oh, what are you now? So you arm yourself with the knowledge and you're going to be much better off. If we go over to the BLS here for accountants and auditors, you see a 4% projected growth rate for the decade, about 61,000 jobs. That's not great, but it's not bad either. So it's always going to be a question of where you live, what the job market is like, and you may have to relocate. However, and this is really important, look at it for bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing clerks. Those are lower level positions. 6% projected decline and almost 100,000 less jobs. That should give you some sense of how the industry is changing, which means your approach to it can't be passive. If you want to make sure that you get to a position where you're somewhat insulated from whatever technological, as it will largely be, impacts will occur down the road. And of course, a lot of people say, I'm going to become a CPA, which is not a bad move, so they can run their own business or work in corporate accounting. I personally think corporate accounting will be the side of the field that thrives still in the future. I think the smaller business is where you're going to see a drawback just because changing technology may make it less necessary to actually have someone do an audit or at least, manage all those books. You might call someone in if something goes wrong, but especially with blockchain, as we're going to see, that may be less necessary. So if you want to be a CPA, this is California's requirements, and they're going to vary based upon the state, so make sure you check that out. You have a bachelor's degree, 24 units in accounting, 24 in business-related subjects, 150 overall, pass the uniform CPA exam, the professional ethics exam, and 1 year general accounting experience supervised by a CPA with an active license. This can come in many forms. It could be a more advanced internship. I believe tax preparation services also counts, but that will depend upon the jurisdiction. So, that's one way to get involved. I don't know. I have heard, of course, that people are sometimes only hired on a temporary basis at these tax offices because of the nature of their work, but there are different options. It's just a question of investigating them, and we'll talk about a couple of different routes at the end of the video. I should note, some people do it as like a prerequisite to going into the FBI or to law school because forensics, that's still a big part and will remain. If something does go wrong, even with blockchain, you have to bring a set of human eyes in. Those who are doing the investigation are probably not going to be robots themselves. If you don't trust whatever algorithm you've actually used to fix the problem or find the problem, you might bring someone in just to essentially have a CYA excuse. And that sounds bad, but that's just the way a lot of our world works. So as far as those concerns with the industry, you have what's been proposed by these writers. Blockchain is going to make a lot of the, especially, examining stuff or managing the books less important because it's supposedly more secure. It's a lot harder to have errors in the system. So there's that perspective, but then you also have these people who say, well, you can end up being an advisor still, kind of like what I was talking about, the person who signs off on stuff. That's still going to be important, not just for the way the business appears, but also to have okay, we can blame this person if something goes wrong, which hopefully it doesn't. Financial analyst, internal control specialist. So there's still going to be something, as I said, within corporate accounting especially. In general, though, you are going to want to be considering the tech side of things. Most accounting programs are moving in that direction, but some of them are still being sluggish, so it's important to consider the school you go to, how cutting edge is it, and a lot of them will say they're cutting edge, but that doesn't mean they necessarily are. If you want to work for one of the bigger accounting firms, consider going to an undergraduate business school that is pretty well respected, because that's where they typically recruit, and don't dismiss the possibility of graduate school as well. So I know, again, it's not the most enticing 6 years of school, but that may be necessary, and I guess it's going to come down to where you are trying to head. There's the possibility of picking up some additional training. This is Coursera, and of course other classes and online delivery services where you can find similar sessions. You have University of Pennsylvania specialization, one from Urbana-Champaign, and I think they were down here you have it from IESE Business School. So a lot of different options. You can actually do through Coursera. It's an IMSA from Illinois, the Urbana-Champaign, and that's like a legitimate master's degree. The current cost of tuition, which I imagine may go up, is between $20,000 and $27,000 depending on what elective courses you take, and can take 1.5 years up to 3 years. That will actually get you qualified to sit for the CPA exam, and they say it also includes training in data mining, strategic accounting, some of the more advanced softwares that are being used now for forensics. So that's not a bad option. Obviously, with everything, be careful about how much money you're spending versus what you're going to be making, because the student loan system in this country is pretty jacked up. It's hard to get away from if you can't pay. So always thinking in terms of money versus what you're trying to accomplish. It needs to be an effective balance. Otherwise, you will be really happy but in debt, or you might be really unhappy and have less debt. It's always going to be a question which direction you're trying to head. And as far as careers go, as I said, you can look at HR Block, TurboTax. I know there's Jackson Hewitt is another. You have local tax firms. You can look for internships there, or even full-time positions, although, like I said, they may be on a temporary basis. This is PwC, tax insurance. They also had like a technological tax innovation type position as well you could apply for. And this is where you go to a decent business school, you have been active in student organizations. This is a good option if you want to go into corporate accounting. Okay. And then finally, this is from USA Jobs. The government does hire people from the Accountability Office, for example, to be financial auditors. Most agencies have their own inspector general department. You might be able to get an internship with them, looking over, is the government cooking the books? Are they spending money that is not being accounted for? All those sorts of things. So accounting still, I think, for our lifetimes is a decent career field, but you have to make sure you're aware of these changing dynamics in the industry, and you're getting the adequate education in the technologies that will now be introduced. So any other majors you want to see discussed, just drop them below.